Welcome to Ask the Accountant, the podcast that is made for you. Weekly podcast live Mondays from 8:30 a.m., released on the podcast service of your choice on Wednesdays. Your main weekly hosts, Aaron, Patrick, and Johann. Got something to ask? Submit your questions below or ask during the show. Podcast loading. We are currently getting everything set up behind the scenes, so sit back, relax, and we will be with you in a few seconds. Enjoy.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Ask the Accountant, our weekly podcast that comes to you at 8:30 every Monday morning. This is the 6th of February on the day of recording. Aaron, happy new accountant's year. How are you? How was your final push last week? And how was your weekend for the first time?
Yeah, we did it. We did it, everybody. Congratulations. We are through from the other end. Yeah, no, it was good to get it over and done with, wasn't it? Like, we can actually enjoy a weekend. We could enjoy, looking at the other aspects of being an accountant, not just filing tax returns each and every day. So no, it was good. It's good. Hopefully everyone out there had the same relief as well. There was no last minute problems, but yeah, it was great to see. Oh, and Paul's already noticed a new addition to your back. You see, look at this dedication we've got there.
That's what I did this weekend. I went out and treated myself. So for those of you that follow me on LinkedIn, you'll know last year my darling wife brought me a NASA space shuttle Lego model to build as a well done for getting through tax season, and you coped with your stress levels very well. So to the point she didn't ask me for a divorce. That was always a bonus. But then I also got some Lego. This year she didn't feel I was stressed enough to deserve a Lego reward, or any reward for that matter.
Damn you, client engager.
Yeah, client engager made it too easy. So instead, I decided to treat myself, which also, so I got myself a nice Lego R2-D2 unit, which I built while watching the rugby this weekend. And then also took the wife out for lunch to keep her happy as well. So yeah, that was my weekend. And I'll tell you what, it's nice to finish tax return season and then have rugby on the first weekend back. That's very good. I really enjoyed that, because rugby marks the start for me of my sporting year, because you've got rugby. Just as the rugby gets halfway through, the F1 kicks off.
It does.
And it gets through to December. Everyone's happy.
Done. Absolutely done.
Happy days. So Aaron, how was last week for you in the end?
Yeah, it was good. It was, I think we spoke off air, didn't we? How the only thing we probably didn't see that we did see in most years was just those last minute inquiries. Not sure what the reason is, not sure why we didn't get as many as we did, but we were kind of prepared for it if they did come in, and sadly they didn't. But no, I think overall we had a lot of positivity really towards the end of it. It was just really just the clients we had left were just clients who just hadn't sent us information. It was as simple as that. And when they did send the information, we just processed it and off it went. So yeah, it was. I don't know what people were worried about really. It was stressful, but it was fine. Looking back on it, we'll obviously look at ways in which we can improve it. But I think it was a good year, to be honest.
Good. And I think that's the key next, isn't it? We've now got 2 months before the next tax return season starts. So internally, we've already started looking at what can and can't we improve. I'm actually on a webinar this afternoon, Any Answers from Accounting Web, where we're talking about what we're going to try and improve ready for next year. I'm on with Samantha. Oh Christ, what's her surname? Samantha Mitchum.
Yes.
So really looking forward to that podcast and live webinar session. But yeah, it's for us now, it's how do we improve things? So in the last year, we've really nailed our onboarding process. So if a client inquires with us and they're proactive with us, we can take an inquiry to a sale, to AML, to getting their data, to doing a tax return within a matter of hours now. So we're really happy with that bit. One of our big focuses is actually now, because we're so happy with that bit, we're going to look at how are we marketing? How are we driving more of those quick sales our way, basically? So yeah, it will be. That's one of our targets. Another one of our big lessons was you need someone in the team to always have their eye on the ball with it. So the whole team we all took our eye off the ball when it came to tax returns in August last year, because we made an acquisition of another firm, and we can see the processing rate just plummet and stay flat for a long time and then go back up. So actually what we've realized is we need someone internally to be dedicated to tax returns all year. Like, doesn't matter what else is going on in the firm, they need to be focused and responsible for that service. So we're a bit more consistent, so we don't have the spikes at the end. But yeah, they're our main outcomes at the moment. Have you got anything already, Aaron, or you yet to sit and review that now you've had your nice weekend of R&R?
Yeah, so we've always been looking at trying to improve services and improve the way that we are. I think your point there about that constantly improving the onboarding is something that we always have high on the agenda, and we always kind of sit back every year and we just kind of look and see what went right, what went wrong. Because for us, that onboarding process is just it was an absolute mess at the beginning, and we've slowly but surely took it into a place where we're actually happy with it. But it is still always that touch point, isn't it? Your first touch point with a client, it's your first chance to really improve your kind of relationship with them. You've made hopefully a good pitch to them to make them like want to sign up in the first place. But if then you send out all these, horrible onboarding processes, then they're not going to sign up with you, are they? So we've always been really thing about that. And I think as well, like, especially for your firm and as our firm kind of starts moving into it, it's such a handy tool when it comes to having those negotiations with potential new buyers, like looking to acquire. If you can come along and just say, look, we will be able to, bring in a lot of efficiencies for you. An example of that is this onboarding process that will help bring that through. It makes those conversations more worthwhile, doesn't it? But I think we are just going to really push on automation this year. It has been by far the most smoothest year for us because we've been able to lean on that automation this year. So something as simple as sending out tax return payment reminders to everyone, before the deadline, as that reminder of A, your return's been filed, so nothing to worry about, so we don't get that inquiry. But B, just make sure that, maybe we've done it so far in advance that you've forgotten the fact you've still got this tax return to pay. So just having something as simple as that works really well. And also just making sure that they're reminded on a regular basis that we can't complete your tax return until you've done certain things for us. So, is it that they've got a tax return checklist to complete or whatever it's going to be? And just trying to lean more on those automations as much as we can. And I think that's where we're going to have a better, system being built going forward, because now we've kind of learned what didn't, what clients got frustrated with, maybe with the automations, what they didn't find they got enough out of. So we'll take those learnings. And then we spoke about it a little bit last week, but now we've really properly looked into it. We're going to use this year as well to really lean on those new enhancements from HMRC, those new API links that gives us more information. We're hoping, fingers crossed, that, this year being the first kind of proper year of it and first proper push from HMRC, that the problems we had with it, so we had about an 80% success rate of grabbing the data we needed, so P60s and items like that from a client. We're hoping that those sort of kinks will be ironed out next year and we can make the most of it. That should help us be able to just crack on with a lot of the work and maybe even send a lot more out in draft when we're still waiting for the little tiny bits. And that's kind of what we're trying to work on. So yeah, it was good. And I think when I look back at this year, and kind of the problems we had and some of the problems that clients had, randomly, the biggest issue was clients thinking they didn't have a need for a tax return. That's where we found the most amount of people who were like leaving it till the very last minute, because when we properly inquired with them, instead of just maybe sending a bit of automation or an odd email or two, when we actually picked up the phone and spoke to them, they're like, oh, well, I sold my rental property this year, so I've got nothing to do. And it's like, yeah, you may have sold it, but HMRC are still expecting that return. So we're going to try and do more of a push as much as we can, just to, teach and help the clients along the way to understand why there is a requirement for them to still do a tax return, even though in their eyes, well, they don't have that rental property or they don't have that business anymore. So why should HMRC care? So I think we just got to do a bit more of a support network, if you like, on that one. So yeah, it was an interesting year, and I think, you know, now that MTD has been pushed back, and we're going to have more of these for the next X amount of years, and I think it's very, very important to make some learnings on it, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely agree. Right, let's quickly go through our comments and welcome our live guests. Remember, we broadcast live to multiple channels on social media on a Monday morning. So good morning, Paul. Thank you for spotting R2D2. You built a Razor Crest over Christmas. Fantastic. There's some really cool Lego models out there at the moment. I had far too much fun in the Lego shop amongst lots of small children who were just getting in the way, quite frankly. We need like an adult section where there's no kids allowed to run around and jump in and out, pulling things off shelves. So, yeah. Good morning, Mr. Crummy. Mr. Crummy, I can see you've asked some questions later on. We'll get to those for you. Morning, Ashley. Happy Monday. Tax returns nailed. Good morning to everyone that's on here. That's lumineck. Loads of comments coming in. Paul's signed up to a virtual phone system and working on revamping his website in the past week. Fantastic. Great bit of getting ready for the next big push, Paul. Well done.
Yeah, that whole virtual phone system will completely change the game, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When we went from your traditional phone to a more virtual one, suddenly you just open up so many options for you. You can start looking maybe having someone else answer the phone, third party, whatever it's going to be, or you can start looking at being far more remote than you've ever been before. So yeah, you're going to absolutely love pushing through on that one.
It just adds a new level of professionalism, doesn't it, when you've got the ability to transfer calls and stuff like that. So Ashley wants to know how we can watch the Accounting Web Ask Any Questions live. There is a link to sign up on Samantha's LinkedIn profile comment that she put on this morning. I'll be putting one out this morning, and Richard from Accounting Web put one out as well this on Friday. So have a quick look for those comments in LinkedIn, Ashley, and there's a link there to sign up. But yeah, right. I think that's all the comments in there.
Yeah, we'll save those comments till the end, and we'll talk about.
Yeah, we'll come back to those that question at the end when we do our Q&A section. So, what's happening in the news in the world of accounting? Well, we've got news. There's one bit of software being thrown to the scrapyard, and there's another one phoenixing. So, let's have a chat about those. So, last week at the latter end, it was announced that Fluidly, I was about to call it something else, but Fluidly has which got brought about a year ago now. Some kind of lending group, Norfolk Bank or something, brought them, and they've now decided to close down the products in 3 months' time. So Fluidly was a AI cash flow tool. I'll be open and honest, I was never overly impressed with it, and I have been quoted in the past as referring to the outcomes of its AI as garbage. So I won't go into too much on that, but ultimately, I can't say I'm surprised that it's being shelved. I was surprised someone was foolish enough to buy it and saw value in it. But their model was always a bit odd. They tempted you in with a free cash flow tool, so that they could then see your analytics and then try and upsell and cross-sell their lending products. And that was before the bank brought them. But yeah, it was never a business model I was overly a fan of. It's not it's not the way we work as an accounting firm. So it never fitted well with us. But yeah, Aaron, what are your thoughts? Another software biting the dust.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it, really? I mean, I personally never really used Fluidly all that much. I had to play around with it at the very beginning. Wasn't blown away with it, if I'm perfectly honest, but at the end of the day, it wasn't really tailored or kind of pointed towards me. I think the only frustration is, and the bit that I kind of looked on a little bit, is this whole idea that cash flow tool boom tapers off. So the kind of idea here is that, well, there is a bit of a flux in the market at the moment when you think about how many cash flow tools are there, that there was always going to be one casualty at some point. But it is a shame that this doesn't seem to be, or at least we've not been able to actively see the kind of the next step in where cash flow forecasting can be. And you really need these ones competing with each other to keep building them up and building them up. I suppose the problem with this one, with Fluidly itself, having that free tier, was its direct competitors was QuickBooks and Xero themselves with their built-in solutions. And Sage, I'm sure, has a built-in one now. Now they've got Futurely as well, haven't they? So, you know, if you're kind of going against quote unquote free ones, and that's what you're up against, even though we've got our criticisms for what those, you know, QuickBooks and Xero ones are, because they're not fully fledged cash flow forecasting tools. They're kind of an entry level drug, as you like to call it, you know, time and time again, you know, and that's fine. Like they do what they need to do, and they give us as accountants tools to have conversation with clients, and they give us as accountants tools to kind of do simple predictions and helpful scenarios for clients. But ultimately, they're not designed to be the full-fledged cash flowing tool and system that some businesses out there desperately need and desperately have to be able to make it through each and every quarter or month or whatever it's going to be. You know, when money is tight, that's when cash flow forecasting tools become essential, don't they? But I think, you know, tools like Fluidly and these ones like this, it would have been nice to see them innovated so that it's not just required for those clients who are needing it for a, you know, it's their last chance saloon sort of idea, and find innovation so that we can have real conversations with, you know, it's a no-brainer for every business out there, because we know as accountants how powerful cash flow tools can be, and how, when done right, is the difference between a really good business and a struggling business. But I do feel like there hasn't been enough innovation at this point to entice those people in, and it's a shame, because I think what can happen and what we've kind of seen as the future and what the potential is going to be, it's a shame that we haven't quite got there yet. And you know, with one of them dropping off and biting the dust, I think it's going to be less likely that we're ever going to get to that utopia of what a cash flow forecasting tool can be. Well, what about you? You know, what do you think is the future of these cash flow forecasting tools now then?
So I think the cash flow software market got very excited at the start of COVID, because all of a sudden every business owner that wanted a bounce back loan or something had to generate a cash flow. So in theory, Fluidly, QuickBooks, QuickBooks and Xero launched theirs earlier than planned because of COVID. It was launched to support people with that. Float, etc. They all saw a huge upsurge in usage. But then as soon as bounce back loans, C-bills were gone, we didn't manage to maintain that value offering to clients. So a lot of the clients that suddenly needed a cash flow didn't see the value in having it as an ongoing thing. It was a one-off. I've done it for this. That's it. And yeah, it is a challenge. And the times you need a cash flow, actually, do you actually need the software? So like a client came to me the other day, he's looking at buying another business. So he needs to come up with a cash flow for that business. And Float and Fluidly and Xero and QuickBooks, they all come to you and say, oh, we can help you with this. It's like, well, no, you can't, because they rely on a link to that accounting software. Well, because the client is looking to buy another business, we don't have the link to that accounting software. So actually, we can't plug you in. It's still a manual process, at which point we may as well use an Excel sheet. So yeah, I think they all got very excited that this was the dawn of the cash flow period. And we're all very good at, you know, throughout the whole COVID, you and I were both saying cash is king. Never mind what that profit number is. Never mind what your balance sheet says. Cash flow is what matters. What's in the bank? Can you actually afford to pay your bills? You can have as much debtors as you want. You can have as much creditors as you want. It doesn't matter. What matters is, are you paying your bills from the bank account? At which point you need cash flow. That is the blood of your business. But after COVID, the value perception in cash flow tools just plummeted again back to where it was before COVID, I would argue. You know, there are times when we talk to a client and we say, look, we can do this, but then those clients are normally a bit strapped for cash. So to then charge them for A, our services, but B, the software, makes it very challenging. as an upsell and perception of value. So yeah, like Float is probably my go-to solution at the moment if I need one. It's run by an absolutely brilliant group of guys. They are based in Edinburgh, so I can go for a coffee with them because they're just next door. But regardless of how good their software is and how much time it will save me, etc., none of that matters until we can educate business owners on a whole in the value and perception of cash flow tools and having a live cash flow has for your business. But yeah, it's a challenge, and it's not one we found the answer for yet, I don't feel.
No, and I think, like Paul's asked, and I think you've answered it brilliantly for Paul. What's your go-to cash flow solution? And for us accountants, it almost becomes part of our deck, doesn't it? We've got this new our tech deck and how we should position ourselves and what we look at. But for me, cash flow has always been what's best for the client, like what tool works best for the client. I've never had just a singular, I'm always going to go to this one. You said it brilliantly there about how powerful and useful it was during COVID to have QuickBooks cash flow. And I've said many a times how that generally saved quite a few of our clients during that time. Yes, it's not got all the bells and whistles as your bigger cash flow managing tools. And yes, it's lacking in certain areas and sometimes it'd be a bit questionable about the information that's coming out. But ultimately just giving them anything that we could during a live meeting, just click a few buttons and we can, have a conversation about something was so powerful. And it was the difference between a client going, you know what, yeah, I can see a light at the end of the tunnel, or, there's something drastically wrong here. We're going to have a bigger conversation, or we're going to have to look at something in more detail. And that for me was so powerful. It creates so many conversations. And even if it was just a way of just being able to give clients that confidence that, if they do things in the right way, then there's a way out of this. It just gave them that bit of that extra spring in their step, that they've got something saying that it's going to be okay. And again, just having something that we can quickly get access to. So my go-to has always just been the QuickBooks cash flow solution, or the Xero, whatever the one they're using. And I only ever go to something bigger when there's a particular need for it. Cashflow Frog is the one that I kind of jumps to mind. Do I go to on a more regular basis? But it all depends on what the requirements are. I think for me, what I would love to see though is that whole realization of what that dream was. I don't know if you remember seeing the video and everything of how cash flow could be implemented in the like of QuickBooks, where it's not just looking at your cash flow forecasting as a number, but it actually then had action points there. So maybe you can move your, when you're going to pay a certain bill from one place to another, and then it'll activate and it will action that your cash is coming in on a certain date. So that's when you want to make the payment to your supplier or whatever it's going to be.
And that's the AI that we want, isn't it?
Yeah,
exactly. Fluidly kept talking about AI powered, and they would look at your invoices and your ins and outs, and they would predict what's going to come in when. Well, 9 out of 10 times they got it wrong for me. So actually, I'd rather they'd have invested their time in AI coming up with suggestions like, if you move this bill by 7 days, you don't go into your overdraft. That's more powerful to me, because that comment I can ring my client and look amazing about.
Exactly. And being able to then action it, directly in there. It is at the moment a bit of a, you roll the dice and hope for the best, and you're hoping that the predicted information's correct, and you kind of being useful, finding that useful, but having an opportunity to move things around and actually action it directly in product, for me, was so powerful. I think the fact that, as we now know, that QuickBooks Cash and stuff doesn't seem to be coming to the UK, so we've probably lost out on that functionality. But I do feel like that's where maybe there's a potential for someone like a cash flowing tool to work with the likes of Cresco or someone to kind of build that solution outside. I think that's what ultimately I'd like to be realized, so that we can see if there is any legs in that sort of idea, because it sounds amazing, doesn't it? Like you said, it sounds like an opportunity for us to wow clients and everything else. But I do think it's something that would give cash flow that next step and that next opportunity to be relevant again without having the need of a global pandemic to really push it down our faces. So yeah, let's hope that the kind of good that came out of people seeing cash flow again and seeing it as an opportunity means that we're not going to stifle the kind of innovation that's in that area.
Yeah, no, definitely. Cool. So that's the one that's bitten the dust. The one that's phoenixing, raising from the dead. Connect 4 is coming back, people. So I got an email a few weeks ago saying that it's coming back. Someone else is taking it on as part of their product suite. And they were asking if I wanted to go back. It's like, it's a bit late now. I've already told my clients we're not using it. I can't then turn around saying, oh, we are now using it. I think the timing issue was a bit of a challenge for them there. But Andrew Jordan, who created Connect 4, whose brainchild it was, announced on LinkedIn last week that that's official. Connect 4 has been salvaged and will be continuing to run. So it was probably offline for 6 weeks, maybe, officially. But yeah, so someone has seen the value in that and has decided to take that back, take it on and grow it. I believe the company that's taken it on is adding it to a suite of other plugins they have for practice management, basically. Let me just have a look for the name. Sumo Tech is taking it on.
Okay.
So yeah, so it proves there must be some value in the perception of Connect 4 and how it works and what it was doing. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that one, Aaron?
I mean, it's always good to see things back. I think from a timing point of view, they couldn't have had a worse 6 weeks to take time out. It's not in their control, was it? But yeah, if you had a magic wand and you could pick when you're going to go silent for 6 weeks, I think during tax deadline is probably the worst possible time. I think it harps us back to what we talked about, though, wasn't it? And in length about the fact that when you're looking at what software you're going to push with and you're going to kind of push your innovations with and you're going to try and build systems around, you've got to be prepared to be agile, haven't you? You know, you said brilliantly how you've got to make sure that you do due diligence on those software, make sure they've got a run rate that's, you know, going to keep them around for long enough so that you don't have that dependability issue on them. But at the same time, when something bigger and better comes along, you've got to be agile enough to be able to go, right, actually, I'm going to see a lot of value from moving to this or back to this in this case. And I think that's a key learning from going forward, isn't it? That agility is going to be so important to us. And I think historically as accountants, we are the worst and the least agile profession there is. Probably lawyers may be worse, but I don't think there's many others that are worse at
we don't like change.
Exactly. So yeah, let's hope we'll get some learnings out of this, because I like the product. I think the product's brilliant. And, you know, maybe as Paul says here, if they rebrand and make the name a little bit more sexy, as he says here, the name was a bit goofy, then maybe there's a potential.
We did get a lot of clients that said, I'm trying to find Connect 4 and I've just got the board game coming up. Yeah, it's a challenge to Google that one.
Yeah. I mean, you could have a game of Connect 4 during your client call with them. I mean, that is could be a nice way of what you call it,
wouldn't it?
Yeah, engagement, isn't it? So
tell
you what, if you beat me at Connect 4, you can have a discount on your services going forward.
Oh, geez. Yeah, maybe not. I wasn't very good at Connect 4. So that could cost me quite a bit. But yeah, so yeah, no, it's good to see that whilst we've got things like Fluidly dropping off, etc., and tax sheets and stuff dropping off to the wayside because of things where AML, ITSA and stuff's not happening straight away, that there is still investment happening. There are still people keen to pick up products and grow their own portfolio of softwares in the accounting industry. So yeah, I think overall it's good news for the industry that it's continued. It's just a shame. I do wonder how many users that dropped off that won't, like myself, won't be going straight back to them.
Yeah,
And
it's
how
important.
much of an impact that has on the business model that the buyer thought they had.
Yeah, because like you've said, I mean, there's such a buy-in for clients, isn't there, when you chop and change something as vital as that? I mean, if it's going to be the solution that is going to ultimately be your communication tool with them, it can be the best tool in the world, but you've got to put a lot of work in to get that implemented.
Yeah.
You've said plenty of times, haven't you, how brilliant. I forget the name of the service you use, but the chat service you use with your clients.
Timworks.
Timworks, exactly. Brilliant piece of software, but that's a lot of work at your end to get that implemented to all your existing clients. New clients, not a problem.
Yeah.
So I think we need to figure out that better for going forward, haven't we? So how do we, literally it's a plug-in to an existing service to help you actually move that on. We learned that from day one with everything that was going on with the world of OCR technology. So the idea of receipt capture versus auto entry versus whatever solution you wanted to use back then. And it was a case of we built our systems from the ground up to say, look, I don't know which one of these is going to be best. I don't know which is right for every one of our clients. So let's make it so that we don't need to worry about what's best or what everything is. Let's own that whole process from start to finish. So what we do is we make sure that clients don't email to those individual products. They still email to our bills solution. So we call it bills@boffix.com. And then when a client goes to there, then our system will go, right, which one are we deciding to use now? And we treat it as a triage and an opportunity to have a tap, and we can move it to whatever solution we are. And these days, most of them will just go back into QuickBooks through receipt capture, whatever it's going to be. But the only reason we're able to have that is because we've been able to build the systems in mind to go, right, let's take a step back and let's look at it from a holistic point of view and look at it down there. I think we've got to find a way, and maybe that's where the gap in the market is for the practice management solution or whatever you're doing, to be able to own what it is, what communication elements you are. Because I think if they can make it easier for us to maybe move and be a bit more agile, then we will be more agile going forward. So I think we've just got to think of a way to make that more appealing for for accountants going forward. So yeah, fingers crossed we can use this as a way to kind of open our eyes a little bit.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's and what you've done there with your bill capturing idea of having a generic email that everyone emails into, and then you control where you funnel that information from there. That's really, really clever. And it's something we're looking at is, right, we might want to swap around our softwares, but how can we keep a consistent point of contact with our clients? So, we're unlikely to move from Dex. We love Dex, but, would we have been better off having a web page where clients go and click on join meeting or join with each client manager or something, and we can then decide whether that's powered by Connect4 or Teams or Zoom or whatever we're using at the time, and the client just knows, I just go to this web page and click this button for my meeting and get let into the meeting room, and go from there.
Well, the tip I would say to that, and the one we learned, is use something like Linktree between hand. So all Linktree is a solution where you have one URL, one link that you put out there, but then you can control where that link goes to. So great example of that idea is that if we've got any meetings or any, if we're doing any sort of marketing push or anything else, we always just have that consistent Linktree. That consistent Linktree is Linktree-Boffix. And from that area, then we can then push people where we want them to go. So they'll click on that on any piece of information we've sent out, and then they can book a call with us, or they can look at our website for more information, or they can go to our store, whatever they want their next step to be. And then we're in control of that. And if we were going to make a change to the software, like you're saying there, to booking the calls or something, we make the change in Linktree, knowing that every other link or every other piece of content we've got out there has already got the correct link and is pushing to the correct place. We're in control of that. So I highly recommend looking into something like Linktree. Squarespace now do their own version. There's loads of solutions out there, but always have that ability to control where your links are going, so that you don't have to go through and change every social post you've ever done or whatever it's going to be. And then you're in control of it. And even just your website, even if it's the the website to book a meeting is a link to XYZ, go straight to the same link tree. And you also get all your stats and figures as well. It's amazing to see how many, where people are clicking from and where they're going to and what's the most popular and all that sort of stuff. That really helps us kind of build and concentrate what's our important bit. Where when we're talking about onboarding and what's working and what's not, well, we can see straight from this link that, well, people are clicking through here and they are interacting with this aspect, but they're not touching the store, for example, or whatever it's going to be. So how do we improve that sort of thing? And it gives us some data to actually work with our onboarding process.
Yeah, I think that's really clever. I will be having a look at Linktree myself. I've had a quick look at it, but I've not thought of it as a landing page and like a control hub for everything to go to. So I like that. Like even last week, someone managed to book a meeting with me at 7:30 p.m. on a Wednesday night, like using a link to an old meeting that I don't even know where they found this link, but they did.
Exactly.
But hey, that's why you don't turn those links off. You just forget about them instead.
But it'd be nice to
know when you're going to get a meeting.
wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's it. So, but yeah, it's really powerful. So, that's brilliant. Okay. Another topic that has been discussed in the accounting world this week, which is very on trend considering the global news, etc., is crypto regulation. So the UK government has put together some proposed legislation to legislate and monitor and keep cryptocurrency companies in check, basically, in the same way that any other current financial products are kept in check. And rightly so. These, people are investing into these things. They shouldn't be able to just be run by cowboys. We've already seen them millions and billions of pounds and dollars lost because of collapsing cryptocurrency companies where they were using QuickBooks to run their accounts. And when you look at their accounts and what's actually happening, they were just completely out of touch and they didn't have the right things in the right areas and stuff. So, yeah, it's a financial institution that is cryptocurrency, so it needs to be governed appropriately and legislated against appropriately. But from what I'm reading, the government seem to have been and done quite a good job with this policy, believe it or not. Like there's praise for their work. I can tell you spent all weekend just playing with your sounds effects, haven't you? On that?
Trying to add them in for once, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So basically, the government is proposing that they will cover all crypto types, whether they're tokens, whether they're the Bitcoin, whatever it is, and they will all come under a regulation umbrella, which will help protect the public and investors from cowboys, etc. I mean, as much as legislating anything can help protect people from these things. I spoke to someone last week who'd somehow been conned by a alleged liquid insolvency practitioner.
Okay.
They'd been introduced to this person. They had a Zoom call. The person showed them this website of a genuine liquid insolvency practitioner company, and then disappeared with $2,500 of their money. And it's like it turns out they never had any association to this company's website who they showed, and with things like that, there are the government website lists who is and isn't, or who is a registered licensed insolvency practitioner, but I think people just don't know to look for that. They don't, they're being preyed upon when they're quite vulnerable, I suppose. And there's a lot of people selling the dream of the crypto world, and regardless of whether you agree or believe in cryptocurrency and whether it will or won't work for you, that's neither here nor there. But there's a lot of people that have been led to invest into it blindly. So legislation from that point of view, in my opinion, is well needed and well justified. So yeah, I mean, Aaron, I know you do a lot of tax returns for clients which have got crypto assets, and I know how much headache and hassle that's caused you in the last year or two. So, what would your hopes of a crypto governance and regulation be?
I agree with your point that actually they've done a good job in terms of the government, that is, in terms of being able to put together a decent kind of proposal for it. I am skeptical in terms of how much that's going to do. We work heavily, don't we, in our sector with accountants that aren't regulated. We see them all the time. We've got R&D, quote unquote, specialists who aren't regulated. We see that all the time. And if those industries, which are, should be seen as a bit more of a, they should have a bit more of a, a professionalism to them, that we should be able to put steps in place to regulate it further, and we're struggling in them. I'm dubious to think how the wild west of crypto can ever be tamed. I think that's unfortunately how it's going to be. But I do believe that there needs to be something. I mean, even if it's something as simple as just being able to have it so there's one sort. This whole idea of crypto is supposed to be, it's this blockchain idea where we can then be able to see one true source of everything that's happened, and if it's not on the blockchain, it's never really happened. I like that, and I've always, from my point of view, I've always seen a great value in that, and it means that we could probably be able to use that blockchain functionality for a lot more than just crypto. The idea that if you send an invoice out to someone, for example, then why shouldn't that live on a blockchain so that then it appears on elsewhere? But I think the only way that we're going to be able to regulate and also make it so it's even viable to use any of these solutions is by being able to see that blockchain in a more simplistic manner, be able to read it and extract the data from there. Because from our point of view, the biggest headache we have with crypto is just the amount of different platforms out there that people are using, because it's a wild west, because it's still quite a new technology and quite prevalent, that to be able to be compliant and to complete a tax return and to get the capital gains right, we're having to learn hundreds of different platforms and how to extract the data we need to complete the information. Whereas if we could just go to this blockchain area and we could just extract the data from there, that would make it so much more viable, really, for any regulation going forward, or for any way in which we can make things simpler for us. So I think that's where the whole emphasis needs to be. We need to be going right to the cause of this. And if we can find a way to make sure that we can have visibility of that blockchain in a simplistic manner, by using software or however we do it, and I think that's going to be the way forward. Because I do think that, if you take away the bad side of crypto in terms of the money laundering and everything else, but if you look at what it has potential to do, it's actually, it could be really, really useful for people, paying people around the world instantly without having to worry about fluctuation in currencies and stuff is really appealing. Items like that, NFTs of the world, maybe there is actually a good idea where that NFT could be something that could work, and when it's done correctly, it could be something that people can benefit from. So I think investment and time is needed in it, and there is a lot of money being made and lost in crypto world. So we also need to be making sure that we're sensible and making sure that we're putting the right taxes in place and everything else. But I do think that the only way that's going to happen is if we find a way to be able to look at the true source, so that we can then actually, whatever regulations we put in place, whatever standardizations we put in place, we've actually got a chance to even fight it. So yeah, I'm skeptical of it, but yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, that someone out there can come up with a solution, because it's the only way I think we're going to be able to make this work going forward.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, if anything, with all the money laundering, everything that happens in cryptocurrency, I think that just shows more the dynamic and adaptable approach criminal groups take to, there is a book out there about running your business in the same way cocaine gangs run their business, because they're so adaptable, they're so adjustable.
Yeah.
They're constantly looking for the next way to get that product into the country or to move their money around. And there's a whole ethos there that actually get rid of the illegal contraband and stuff. But if you take that mental attitude and approach to continuous development and continuous improvement, there's actually a lot to be learned from those people, and they're quite entrepreneurial in a way.
Yeah.
It's just not legal what they're doing. So yeah, I think crypto's got a place in the world. I think it's more than just replacing investment in stocks and shares.
Mm.
You know, it could power payments. It can do all sorts of stuff. Unfortunately, with any of these new things, the bad and the ugly get into it first, and they cause a bad reputation and deliver untrust and stuff like that. So if the government can regulate, I mean, these are just proposed legislations. How much of it actually comes through and when it takes effect is a very different matter. But yeah, I think any step in that direction where we can help protect people from losing their lifelong investments. You know, I mean, students come out of university with enough debt, but you then read about students that have invested, you know, another 10% of their annual of their university debt into crypto, and they've lost it. So like there's one student, they'd lost £5,000, and people that are investing their pensions into it, and now that's gone bust because someone was maintaining the accounts on a QuickBooks account when it's a multi-billion pound company. Like it is a wild west out there, and anything we can do to help tame that and make it a bit safer, I think, is a positive step.
But I suppose the same could be said about stocks and shares, though, hasn't it? I mean, because we've gone through a bad couple of months and a couple of in a year or so, it's people have had the same stories through them. So yeah, if we can't tame stocks and shares, and we can't make that something that can be more or less volatile, then I don't know how we could ever do it for crypto. I think that's where the skepticism comes out, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly requires a lot more. It's not like you're looking after the sterling or the dollar. You are looking at a product that is worldwide. So there's got to be agreements within governments on how we deal with that, which makes it even more challenging because these governments don't agree at the best of times. Right. Shall we go on to...
Paul just had one final bit. I think anything seems too good to be true, the general public are just skeptical, whereas criminals are willing to risk on the change of a quick win. And yeah, right, isn't it? And like Johann said, maybe we should be learning a little bit from, again, less the criminal side, but more the entrepreneurial side of that.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Right, let's go back to Mr. Crummy's questions.
Yep.
So, Aaron, question for you. It's my first year of trading, and the question is regarding stock. If I buy 100 items at an auction and sell for, say, £100, so nice easy maths, we like this, Mr. Crummy. I sell 50 of those items in my first year for £2 each. How do I account for this? Do I claim the full £100 cost price, or what about the remaining stock in my second year? Go for it.
So for me, this is where software helps massively, because this is one where it does becomes a bit of a headache. So if we're going to look at the principles of what should happen, is you've got to be thinking of what's called an accrual basis. So the simplest way of thinking about that is every time you sell an item in any form of business, then for you to be able to claim an expense against that item, you've got to have made it against that sale. So the simplest way of looking about that, if I've sold something for whatever amount it is, then that's the year in which I should then be able to claim for that cost for it. And the only reason we worry about stock and moving stock around from one year to the next and everything else is to try and bring it all in line with that whole accrual basis. So that's for me where software becomes really straightforward and simple, because it takes that complication and complexity away from it completely. Something as simple as QuickBooks means that when you actually buy those items in, then it will only actually appear within the correct year for you automatically through the stock system within QuickBooks itself. And then it just takes the complexity out of it, because what you need to be doing in your case here is every time you come to a year end, you've got to do a stock take. You've then got to make sure you value that stock correctly. And then technically you then need to provide for that stock in the account so that it gets carried forward from one year to the next. and it does become really complicated and a lot of big time sink as well, because you're then going to have to make sure that you're valuing it at the right time and you've counted for it correctly and all sorts of things. But something as simple as some stock system means that you could easily find out how much stock you had at your year end. QuickBooks will then calculate that bit for you. So you just do a bit of sense check to say, make sure that that stock seems reasonable. It seems like that's how much you got left and that the value seems right. And then you don't need to worry about it at all. So yeah, in my opinion, I would just push towards let software do it for you. But in the kind of, if you're looking at it from what is your principle and what your responsibility is going to be, well, you need to be making sure that you do have some sort of stock figure at the year end, so that you can be compliant in terms of this whole quote unquote accrual basis that we need to put our accounts into. So yeah, it's let software make it easy for you, and if not, then be prepared to do some stock takes at year end, because everyone loves a stock take, don't they?
Yes, my wife works in pharmacy, and they have stock takers in almost monthly, not just to keep on top of the stock, but also make sure legislated and medications don't go missing. But yeah,
it's anything like that, isn't it? It's a quality control as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and I always remember when I used to work at Argos as a young man, and we had stock takers in. It's like, oh my god, they're always under your feet. So, but yeah, it's important that you maintain those records accurately, and just using software makes it so much quicker and easier. Gives you a much better visibility of your performance on an ongoing basis as well. So, yeah,
and we know that's an area where software is improving as well, because we've seen from if you look back at QuickBooks Connect USA, and I did a video on it. I know we talked about in the last QuickBooks Labs as well, didn't we? How that's a feature that they're bringing in. So, the utopia of the world is that because we're getting much more digital and we've got API links and everything else, well, then let's connect to your eBays and your Amazons of the world. Let that be your stock taking solution. Because at the end of the day, that's a great indication of what your stock's going to be, because you've got stock there waiting to be sold. You may have a big death pile of stuff you've not yet listed, but again, QuickBooks can try and pick that up for you, and they try and have that in there. So yeah, let's kind of use software to push for them, especially when your margins, in your sort of a example like that, you want to be kind of making it as efficient as possible to maximize your profits.
Definitely. Well, that brings us up to about the end of our show, people. That is best part of an hour gone already. So, Aaron, what have you got coming up this week? What would you like to plug while you're here?
Well, we're off to London, aren't we? We're actually going to go see the mothership. Going over to Victoria. Yeah, going to Victoria. Gonna go into the QuickBooks HQ. Hopefully have an opportunity to give our opinions on what's going on in the world of QuickBooks at the moment, and hopefully steer some of the conversations in the right direction. So looking forward to that. And personal plugs, video wise and things like that. We're really looking at the moment of trying to find ways in which we can plug that understanding gap. So as I said before, about people not fully understanding why they still have a tax return to do. So yeah, we've got videos on that sort of element going forward. What about you? Any enhancements or anything you want to plug for Client Engage or anything?
I'm just trying to keep up with the development team at Client Engager as they put stuff out. I need to do videos. So yeah, there was 2 videos last week. I think I'm going to probably have a few more this week. But yeah, just constantly developing at Client Engager. So if you need a practice management system that looks after you from day one of your practice, then get involved. But yeah, no, I'm all over the place this week. So I've got Accounting Web Live today. Wednesday, I'm doing a live stream with Bev at Iris about how to get your practice running without you. Then on Thursday, I'm at QuickBooks. Then yeah, I'm hoping Friday might be a quiet day in the office, but I don't know if I'm going to achieve that. So we'll see. But yeah, it's busy week ahead. I think actually it's the start of a busy 5 weeks looking at my diary. So
yeah, all good. It seems to be this, it was like this kind of few days, wasn't it, that we had after the January deadline. Definitely for us, we had a bit of a chance just to kind of recharge the battery sort of things. But yeah, if I look at the calendar now, it's worse, if not, on par with what January was itself. So fair enough. That's good.
Might not have as many deadlines to get done, but Christ, have I got a lot of meetings and phone calls and Zoom calls booked in.
Exactly. Booked out, which is good to see, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for everyone that's been listening. We thank you for your live comments, etc. Remember, if you're listening back to this on the podcast that releases on a Wednesday morning, then why not join us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, even Twitch? We're there as well. So, and ask your questions, get involved, get your input in the conversation. And we love having people like Paul and Ashley who give us their insights on the topics that we're discussing. It just makes it nice to be taking other people's views into account that aren't just mine and Aaron's. So yeah, if you're listening back to this on the podcast, please get involved, and we will both see you next week at 8:30 on Monday morning in the usual places. So thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone. Have a great weekend or week
and weekend.